What's going on, guys? Austin Zay back here with another YouTube video on my channel. If you're brand new here, we talk a lot about real estate, business, and finance, and today we're going to be talking about why you should never rent a home, okay? Or if you are renting right now, why, maybe purchasing a home might be a good idea. Now, obviously, the real estate market is insane in 2022, okay? The real estate market was crazy basically for the last decade. When you look at the last couple of years, the real estate market has completely taken off, and we have a very low supply. Okay, and we have obviously a very high demand, and we had low interest rates for a very long time. And there were so many variables that played into the real estate market, but I really am not going to get into too many of the variables in today's video because instead I'm going to share with you why I believe renting is just overall not a great idea. According to CNBC, rents are up over 30%, and in some cities they're actually up even more than that. The nationwide average monthly rent is about $1,164, and 28.4% is the average rent to income ratio in the US. So not very long ago, I myself personally was actually renting, which is really ironic because I'm actually a real estate investor, I'm a real estate agent, and I own multiple different rental properties, and we wholesale about 30 to 50 houses a month. And if you're not familiar with what wholesaling is, definitely go check it out on my channel and make sure to subscribe. But basically 30 to 50 times a month, we flip a purchase contract to a piece of residential real estate, typically for a little bit of arbitrage or a little bit of profit, otherwise known as an assignment fee or a double close. And I'm also a real estate agent that has about 20 real estate agents on my team. So you might be watching the video like, Austin, if you're that heavily involved in real estate, then why in the world were you renting? And I was probably renting for a lot of the same reasons that you're renting right now if you're watching the video, or if you're, thinking about going and getting an apartment and you're 18 and you want to move out. Probably a lot of the same reasons that you're considering renting were a lot of the reasons that I rented for so long. So I actually rented about 15 different apartments from the age of 18 to the age of 26. Now again, I've owned a lot of rental properties, I've flipped a ton of properties, but I've never actually owned a primary residence. And it really wasn't until I bought the primary to live in that I realized how renting really didn't ever make any sense. And you'll hear guys like Grant Cardone talk about, you have to be nimble and to rent where you live and to go ahead and own where you rent. And then you hear guys on the other end of the spectrum like Dave Ramsey that says don't buy a home unless you can pay cash. And I'm not gonna get too much into any of that. I'm just gonna share my personal experience and why I personally realized that, renting really didn't make any sense. So if you're renting right now, definitely make sure to stay to the end of the video. So for me, I was paying about $3,500 a month in rent. Now, obviously, I lived in Scottsdale, Arizona in a fairly nice apartment complex. Now, if you do the math on that, that's about $42,000 a year. And what's so interesting about that is I got to really thinking after I bought a home, I really started to compare like renting an apartment to a hard money loan. And if you know anything about real estate, a hard money loan is basically where you go buy a piece of real estate and it's like short-term financing, interest only. Typically, it's about 10% interest. And so you're never actually paying down the principal of the loan. All of the money is just going to the person that gave you the loan. And when I really looked back, and they say hindsight's 20/20, I kind of started to look at rent like, well, I basically just had a hard money payment that I never refinanced out of. And so it didn't really dawn on me that I was wasting so much money and throwing so much money down the drain. Once I actually bought a house, I not only realized that I was missing out on a lot of the other real estate benefits of just owning a primary. And again, you'd think it would be common sense for a guy that does real estate every single day, but for whatever reason, I just never really applied the principles to my own life. Instead, I would flip properties, I would wholesale, I would buy rentals, and I was just so laser focused on building up my real estate portfolio that I never stopped to think, to realize basically that I needed to actually have a primary to live in. And once I bought a home, I realized that basically now I'm not only paying down my principal, I got a good interest rate, my property is going to appreciate over time, I can depreciate it against my taxes, and there's so many other benefits to having a piece of real estate as well, such as the fact that I can actually renovate my property over time, make it nicer, value add, and even do a potential addition to a primary if you buy the right deal, to basically create a bunch of free money, otherwise known as equity. So I'll just give you an example. I bought a house for $375,000, okay? I actually ended up selling it to a buddy of mine. He renovated it, and I bought it back from him for like $480,000, okay? Now, the property is probably worth north of $500,000, but I decided that I wanted to go ahead and do an addition to my property of about 600 square feet or so, okay? I was going to do an addition with a master bedroom and a master bathroom. Now, there's already obviously a master, but I'm going to add another master, therefore kind of creating a split floor plan. In doing so, my property value will go up to north of $700,000, potentially even $800,000. I can then refinance it at that point, and I can pull probably roughly $200,000 to $250,000 back out of the home. Now again, I initially only put $75,000 down, which is quite a bit, and you definitely don't have to put that much down if you're watching the video. You can get what they call a VA loan or an FHA loan, where you can put basically anywhere from 0 to 3.5% down. So again, I obviously chose to put more money down, but it's definitely not something that you have to do. So already I'm literally making like over $100,000 by just doing a little bit of a value add to the property. Now, I obviously can't value add an apartment ever. Like anything I do to an apartment is just money down the drain. At my old apartment complex, I did like a really cool accent wall in the living room. I did like a cool wallpaper and things like that. And when I moved out, they wanted nothing to do with it. They just ripped it all off the wall, and it was just 100% money down the drain. So the way I really started to look at it is that renting is essentially a hard money payment. And if you know anything about real estate, you know you always want to refinance out of a hard money loan. So if my goal is to refinance out of a hard money loan, if I, buy a fix and flip or something of that effect, then why wouldn't I want to get out of an apartment immediately? I mean, the only reason that I could think of where I would want to rent instead of own is that maybe I just can't find a house. Maybe I'm not sure that that is the place I want to live. Or maybe I have, a bad credit score or something like that where I can't get approved. But again, those are all things that you can figure out. I mean, if you have a bad credit score, you can definitely get your credit up by just watching YouTube videos. If you don't have enough money down, you can go get a couple of side hustles or passive streams of income to go ahead and make enough money to put that money down, right? I mean, there's really no reason that you should not go buy a home. And a lot of people will argue, well, I don't want to buy at the top of the market. And the reality of it is, as long as you're not going to sell it in the next 2 to 5 years, you're not going to lose money, because over the course of a long enough period of time, real estate will always trend in the upward direction. So even if the market were to crash tomorrow, as long as you don't buy here and sell here, you're going to be just fine, right? You just have to make sure that you're not going to move in the next 2 to 5 years. There's really not a lot of valid arguments out there, in my opinion, why you shouldn't own a primary residence. Like, you have to have somewhere to live anyways. You're either going to pay rent or you're going to pay a mortgage. I would rather pay a mortgage. And worst case scenario, if the market did crash and I had to move, which again, I'll save that for another video. I actually don't think that the market is inherently going to crash tomorrow. And even if it were to start to trend down and you needed to move, you could definitely go ahead and just put a renter into that house and cover the mortgage. As long as the rent will cover your PITI, which is your principal, your interest, your taxes, and your insurance, then you're 100% fine, because people have to have a place to live. And even if this video gets millions of views, people are going to keep renting. So there's no reason that people wouldn't rent out your primary. I think we just live in a world where, I don't know, for some reason millennials, they want to rent, they want to live at a nice apartment complex, and I do understand. But when it comes to making money, when it comes to, really leveraging your money the right way and making your money work for you, if you have to have somewhere to live anyways, I do believe that you should go ahead and purchase a home. And I'm not just saying that. I'm saying that with personal experience. The moment I moved into a home, I was like, man, I should have owned a primary a long time ago. The reality of it is also that rents typically don't go down when the market goes down. Rents have really been going up since like 1980. And, in the down markets, rents might go down just a little bit, but rents won't necessarily correlate 100% to housing prices, right? So if the market were to crash and housing prices were to take a big dip, rents might go down a little bit, but not much, right? It is my opinion that if the market were to go down in the next kind of like downturn that we might see, that rents will actually go up, okay? Because again, if people can't afford to buy, or there's nothing to buy, or they don't have the money down, or whatever it might be, then they have to rent, right? Like they actually don't have an option. If there's not a lot of supply on the market, then that will actually drive the price of rent up throughout the nation, okay? So again, you have to understand that even if you were to buy and the market were to take a slight downturn and you needed to move, you would just rent out your property, right? And now you're building a rental portfolio, okay? So again, then you could go buy a secondary home, right? Whatever the case might be. So, yeah, interest rates are going up a little bit, but at the end of the day, I do believe that it is still a phenomenal time to buy, and I believe that trying to time the market just is not the right answer. I think people have been trying to time the market for many, many years, and I have friends personally that have been trying to time the market since 2018. They're like, we're at an all-time high. And then in 2019, they're like, we're at an all-time high, I can't buy. And then 2020, 2021, and here we are in 2022, and they're still saying the same thing. And the reality of it is, we might keep going till 2023 or 2024, and the market could downturn tomorrow. Nobody really knows, and nobody really has a crystal ball. So therefore, if you're on the fence about buying, my biggest recommendation would be to do the math, right? Like sit down and do the math. How much money are you paying in rent? And how much money are you throwing away, right? And not only the amount of money you're paying in rent, but what are you missing out on by not owning, right? When you look at appreciation, you look at depreciation, you look at potentially doing a value add or renovating a property and creating equity, right? What all are you missing out on by not owning a property? And once you really do the math and you do your research, you watch some more YouTube videos, you Google it, you pull up a mortgage calculator and you look at what your mortgage would be, you work on your credit score, get your down payment, and you really look at all the numbers, then I believe that you can decide and make an educated decision on whether or not you want to rent or you want to own, okay? Again, it is just my opinion that you should own instead of rent, but you do obviously whatever it is that you want to do. I hope the video gave you a little bit of value. If it did, definitely smash the like button, smash the subscribe button if you haven't already. I really appreciate it, and definitely check out all of the other videos on our channel, and I really appreciate it again, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.